light our wonderful tree, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Off we go.
Shall I go on three?
Yes, please.
1, 2, 3.
Bravo.
So these are the names of those whom we remember this evening. Joyce Harrison, Emily and Anthony Ivanovich, Esther Thompson and George Bullen, Gladys Newstead, Grace Georgina Rosen, Derek Arthur Rosen, Francis Belton, Frank Cross, Noel Gordon Allen, Pauline Ann Halford, Jean Clayton, Tom Gassie Clayton, Gordon J, Nora Chester, John and Pauline Beattie, Peter Shaw, Evelyn Shaw, Barbara Shannon, Lion and Squadron Leader Bert Gardner, LLB, Amy Beatrice Darby, Peggy Irene Smith, Lindsay Marie Burgess, George W. Button, Barbara Morris, Eric Redshaw, June Marie Smith, Gladys May Firth, John Firth, Edna Firth, George Oliver, Bruce Duckworth, Eileen Mayer, John Waterfall, Jean Waterfall, Harold Mac Maskell, Audrey Maskell, Robin and June Martin, Fred and Liz Walters, Sharon Elizabeth Hughes, Joyce Barlow, Neville Stewart, Jenny Stewart, John Bennett, Tony Simpson, Margaret Simpson,
Roger McNamara, Annie McNamara, Olga Mann, Nana Lewin, Guy Stockton, Christine Emerson, Claire Forward, Elaine Chantry, Thomas Joseph Kilfoyle, Stephen Vamplew, Douglas Holdaway, Betty Holdaway, Rob Willett, Doreen Fiddling, Nigel Fiddling, Dorothy Scott, Tony Scott, Iris Cross, Francis and Jim Knight, Edith and Samuel Smith, Francis Watkins, Robin and June Martin, Fred and Liz Walters, David Morby, Sylvia Morby, Colin Senior, Peggy Brammer, Bruce Bell, Gordon Newsham, Patricia Utley, Joan Utley, Kim Knight, Fred Walker, Ivy Walker, Dot Whiting, Graham Martin, Leslie Carter, Phyllis Carter, Dorothy Carter, Cynthia Richardson, Graham Richardson, Carol Richardson, Daniel Kirk, Vera Kirk, Randolph Cropley, Nellie Cropley, Monty and Mary Cropley, Ray Len and Pat Cropley, David Law, Michael Law, Bill Gray, Sheila Gray, Pat Jones, Jim Jones, Fred Gravel, Molly Gravel, Alex Gravel, Fen Holdaway Willett, Rob Willett.
Ted and Vera Hudson, Leslie Lawrence Toynton, Mick Patrick, Philip and Sissy Church, Jimmy and Ruby Walker, George Sharp, Joan Sharp, Mr. and Mrs. R.A.P. Barker, Lucy Danby, David Cortman, Dave Kojak Baxter, Margaret Ledlard, Barbara Granny Smith, David W. Keeling, Doris E. Keeling, Edna Barber, Joe Fish Collier, Pam Jacklin, Carl Jacklin, John Sadler, Robert Blackburn, Dennis Stedman, Iris Benton, Shirley Wood, Mary Leggett, Carol Lovely, Faye Stanley, Steve Stanley, Edward Bell, Carl Smith, William Mayer, Anita Longden, Roy Parsons, Baby Jane Lay, David Ladlow, Pauline Ladlow, Patricia Lawrence, Janet Shedden, Julie Darley, Parminderjit Singh Dillon, Albert Emmanuel Humphrey, Cicely Margaret Humphrey, Bill Fielder, Terence Walters, Peter Walters. Gladys Irene Tremere, John Franklin Shaw, Norma Shaw, Francis Bennett, Fred Bennett, Carol Duckett, Molly Howell, Jeffrey Brown, Harry Cooksey.
Brian Pacey, Liz Podam, Tom Podham, Ray Podham, Bill Alcock, Pam Smith, Pat Alcock, Martin Leithley, Peter Dowes, Gladys Martin, Jim Portas, Ivy Portas, David Portas, John Eaton, Peter and Judy Lowe, Ian Sleeth, Valerie Sleeth, Sam Sleeth, Derek Lee, Audrey Lee, David White, Paul White, Walter and Olive Holmes, Steve Diamond, Ron Paul, Marguerite Paul, Charles Walden, Michael William Hubbard, Edna Mary Gowing, Claire Han, Peggy Willis, Bernard Willis, David MacDonald, Jill Wheeler, Dorothy Tucker, Gordon Spittlehouse, Daphne Spittlehouse, Ian Clark, Mary Clark, Michael Aspden, Mary and James Barons, Vera Aspden, Vanessa Jane McFarlane, Matthew Weston, Harry and Edna Ely, John Clough, Chris Swift, Diane Swift, Michael Burton, John James Hackett, June Ann Hackett, Christopher Hackett, Stan Bowles, Chris Job, Vivian and Wilfred Yates, Olive and Ken Peacock, Tony Monaghan, Ruby Caton, Tom Caton, Ada Close, Lee Close, Maureen Maltby, Stanley Burnett, Doris Evelyn Burnett, Roy Burnett, John Leslie Blakey, Archie Burnett, Jim Huntley, Calvin Dubois.
Mick Hodson, Derek Hodson, Valerie Shepherd, Andrei Stanishevsky, Sean Longley, Albert Espin, Joan Espin, John Espin, Lucy Roberts, Gwen Butterfield, Sylvia Watts, Cyril Watts, Ed Hall, Mo and Shirley Wilkinson, Douglas James Wade, Hilary Francis Wade, Christopher George Spencer, Valerie Francis Cooper, Sarah Sally Ellen Darby, Andrew Downey, Mavis Sargent, Reg Sargent, Doris Johnson, Danny Timpany, James Frederick Danby Watson, Margaret Rose Johnson, Poppy, Margaret Eileen Martin, Albert Henry Martin, Emma Louise Barley, Mark Russell, Dave Bell, Margaret Whittington, Gordon Darley, Jeff Lawton, Derek Oates, Wendy Oates, Ian Oates, Adrienne Ann Bark, Natalie Christina Bark, Kenneth Kelsey, Donald Kelsey, Janet Kelsey, Derek Kelsey, Ralph and Emma Kelsey, Doreen and Edwin Spate, Christine Chester, Ken Chester, Karen Freeman, Barry Waite, Mr. R and Mrs. K.A. Towler, Derek Myers and June Myers, Fred Panton and Betty Panton, Michael Skaman, Sheila Garden, Mel Ford, Gladys Newstead, David Kirk, Gary Kirk, Jean Gibbons, Alan Archer, Elsie Mae Crow, Baby Liam Greenfield, Lisa Mackenzie, Michael Rogan, June Rogan, Michael Wallace, Debbie Ward, Dottie Harrison, Rodney John Martin.
Dorothy Deal, Leslie Carter, Wendy Joyner, Harold Ireland, Monica Lennox, Michael Beard, Timothy William Stebbings, Hazel Patricia Jones, Richard Jones, Joan Simpson, Alan Simpson, Gemma Louise Weaver, Kimberly Amber Tilbury, Ivy Kathleen Smith, William John Smith, Ella Empson, Jess Empson, Jeff Calderborg, Joe Rinfred Cottingham, Angela Andy Kisby, Dennis Kisby, Joan John Alshin, Anne Wayne, Jean Mitchell, David Stewart, Tony Mowbray, Mavis Mowbray, Jack Gosling, Jill Gosling, John Corby, Pam Corby, Pam and Vic Wilkinson, John and Terry Williams, Barry Billingham, David Birchall, Claire Birchall, Fred, Hilda and Paul Schofield, James, Nora and Teresa Birchall, Barry Bushell, Joyce Bushell, Michael Toyne, John Toyne, John Perry, Elsie Perry, Thomas McLaughlin, Edith McLaughlin, Leonard Perkins, Vera Perkins, Ronald Clark, David John Clark, Bill Clift, John Ravenhall, Joyce Boundy, Colin Knott, Glenn Stevenson, Louis Stevenson, William Rod O'Connor, Beverly Lee, Margaret Hogarth, John Scowen, Tracy Raquel, Ron Brooks, Doreen Brooks, Joan Brooks, Bert Scott, Terence Kelly, David Mackay, Cyril Skaman. Finally, we have 4 names who unfortunately aren't on the tribute boards, but we remember them too: Mary Crow, Philip Crow, John Crow, and Lou Garrett.
So those are all the names that we remember this evening. In a moment I'm going to ask you to have a short period of silence as we remember them, remembering and knowing that each and every one of them was part of a family and loved by many, many people, including ourselves. And that love endures always. And today is a very special day when we name those whom we love and with whom we spend significant parts of our lives. And so let us have just a moment of silence as we hold all those names, especially those special to us. We shall remember them. We shall never forget them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for coming along this evening. It would be wonderful if you could, as many as possible, you would gather closely around the tree where we are now. We'll put the bear in the middle, and we'd love to take a photograph of the group, which has become
Facing the other way.
facing the other way, facing outwards, which is something that